Next on Currents News, the historic church summit. Hispanic Catholics shining bright from Texas. Team coverage of V Encuentro is next. President Trump backs Judge Brett Kavanaugh as the Supreme Court nominee vows not to withdraw.
The story of America's first African-American priest is being told on stage and in pews here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. I'm Katie Anguser, and I'll have that story coming up tonight.
Plus, Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio launches a celebrated tradition in the diocese, the 37th annual Great Irish Fair. The news starts right now.
We have a lot of work to do, but we're going to do that work with passion and prayer.
That is a leading voice in a growing movement, summing up the role Hispanics will play in the future of the Catholic Church. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The National Encuentro in Texas, which attracted thousands of Catholics, wrapped up this weekend, but the work has just begun. Currents News' Tim Harfman is back from the Lone Star State and has a look at the event's major themes.
For nearly 3,000 Catholics, attending this national fifth Encuentro or encounter taught them a lot.
We've learned joy, the joy of ministry, and when you do it well and with others, it's infectious.
The president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, celebrated Sunday's closing mass at a convention center in Grapevine, Texas, about 20 miles west of Dallas. Along with liturgies, discussion groups over the four-day conference covered a variety of topics, ranging from immigration to vocations to family life. One of the main subjects, the role of young Hispanic Catholics in the church.
It has been a very amazing experience for me as a young adult, and I am very committed now to go back to my diocese and continue the work with the young adults.
At the National Summit, nearly 30% of participants were under the age of 35. Another key issue during the bilingual conference, unity among diverse communities. Bishop Michael Olson of Fort Worth, Texas, says in order to unite, everyone must make sacrifices.
Those who are speaking the predominant culture and are speaking English always have to be willing to listen to another group, but it also means that in the Spanish-speaking community there has to be a willingness to let go also of things that they hold dear.
But also on everyone's minds, the sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Octavio Cisneros says though it's an important issue that must be addressed, the fifth Encuentro was meant to enlighten the faithful in other areas.
Events and things happen as they've been happening nationally and internationally in the church that sort of brings you down. But we have to look beyond that.
Bishop Daniel Flores leads over 1 million Catholics in Brownsville, Texas, and says the fifth Encuentro is not only for Hispanics, but for the universal church.
It's about lifting up the whole mission of the church and not just in one community or another. So it's strengthening our roots so that we can be of service to everybody else.
The next step for these Catholics to return to their parishes and put what they learned into action. In Grapevine, Texas, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
We continue our team coverage of the historic Encuentro Summit, and here straight from the national gathering in Texas is editor-in-chief of the Tablet and Nuestra Voz, Jorge Dominguez. Jorge, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you,
As
Liz.
always, there was a lot going on there. There were keynote speeches, there were mass celebrations, so much more. What was said, though, among the attendees about this clerical sex abuse scandal? Because it was a prominent topic in Ireland when the Pope was there. How about at the Encuentro?
It was different in two senses. The thing is, the Pope was not there, so the lay press was not there as much. And the other thing is, there were 3,000 attendees. It's very hard to know what each of them thought, but what you can feel the atmosphere. And the atmosphere was, this is a very painful subject. It is real, it is important, but it's not the whole life of the church. In that sense, Bishop Daniel Flores, by the way, I love the man. He's a character. And Bishop Daniel Flores said something, he said, this is a horrible thing and we have to take care of that. But we cannot allow the whole church to be paralyzed by that issue. We have to take care of that issue. It's the most important issue right now. But we have to continue evangelizing. We have to continue talking about immigration. We have to continue to do all the things that we are supposed to do. I think in that sense, in a sense, that was the spirit in Encuentro. It was not avoiding the issue. And it was not that they didn't recognize that it was an important and painful issue, but it was like, we are not going to allow that to paralyze the whole meeting.
Now, you heard from the bishops and other prelates there. Were the laity given an opportunity to kind of weigh in on this very important discussion?
Oh, it was a free-for-all with the lay people. I mean, everybody was expressing their ideas. And one of the ideas was, the majority of people here, we are lay people. This is a problem with the clergy, not with us. So that was a very strong message. We are not going to be, dominated by that issue because, I mean, it's a church issue, but it was not mainly a lay issue.
Now, attendance has gone up, Jorge, significantly from the national encuentros, from 2,000 back in 1985 to 3,000 this time. What do you think is behind that significant increase?
Oh, several things. The first one is in 1972, when the first encuentro took place, there were 10 million Hispanics in the United States. Today, we are like 56 million. And in the second place, and this is the important thing, more than 250,000 people participated in the preparatory process that took place over the previous 2 years. So, of course, there are more Hispanic Catholics and more Hispanic leaders among the Catholics.
All right, Jorge, thank you so much. It sounds like it was a really great, fulfilling time, so we definitely want to hear more about it, which we'll hear about and read about in Nuestra Voz, I'm sure.
Of course,
and
the tablet too.
Of course. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
The Brooklyn Diocese has several important measures in place to help identify and prevent sexual abuse. Under the leadership of Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio, the Office of Victim Assistance has been established to help individuals who come forward with allegations of abuse. The office provides many resources, including counseling and referrals for therapy. Also, every employee of the diocese, including students, undergoes mandatory training designed to spot the signs of abuse and how to stop it. The bishop meets with survivors and listens to them carefully. One result of those talks is the annual Mass of Hope and Healing in the diocese. And the diocese also has a toll-free and confidential sexual abuse reporting line. That number is 888-634-4499. For more information, go to the Diocese of Brooklyn's website, dioceseofbrooklyn.org, and click on Protecting Our Children. A Trump administration plan to link green card eligibility with immigrants receiving government assistance is getting backlash from U.S. bishops. A new rule proposed Saturday could deny green cards to migrants if they use Medicaid, food stamps, and other forms of public aid. The bishops put out a statement Sunday against the plan, saying, quote, "This will be very harmful to families struggling to fulfill the American dream." Bishops' Conference President Cardinal Daniel DiNardo urged cooperation with the government.
We work with them. We'll study it, and we'll come forth, hopefully, to work with Congress, the administration, to help improve the situation rather than make it more difficult.
Federal law already requires those seeking green cards to prove they will not be a financial burden on the government. The new rules detail the broad range of programs that could disqualify the immigrants. The number of people living in the U.S. who don't speak English at home is at a record high, 67 million. More than half of the people in Los Angeles, 59%, and almost half of the residents in New York and Houston do not speak English when at home. Far and away, Spanish is the most popular language, followed by Chinese. The future of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appears to be up in the air tonight, and a showdown between him and the president could happen soon. Omar Jimenez reports the latest from Washington.
Rod Rosenstein, Deputy Attorney General and overseer of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation, met with Chief of Staff John Kelly at the White House on Monday amidst reports he expected to be fired. This comes in the wake of a New York Times report that Rosenstein secretly discussed recording President Donald Trump and invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office, a report that Rosenstein has denied. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said in a statement he and President Trump had an extended conversation to discuss the recent news stories. Trump responded to the reports from the United Nations General Assembly Monday.
I'm meeting with Rod Rosenstein on Thursday when I get back from all of these meetings, and we'll be meeting at the White House, and we'll be determining what's going on.
In the meantime, what remains unclear is the fate of Rosenstein's job.
This looks to me like a slow-moving Saturday night massacre. It seems like the only question is whether these steps take place now or they take place after the midterms when the president believes he'll pay less of a political price for it.
Trump appointed Rosenstein as Deputy Attorney General, but has expressed extreme frustration with him for months, partly over his decision to hire Mueller last year. Trump has repeatedly branded the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. All of this unfolding alongside a contentious Supreme Court confirmation process for Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Republican allies of the president have urged Trump to hold off on a purge of Justice Department officials until Kavanaugh is safely in place on the high court. In Washington, Omar Jimenez, Currents News.
And the latest on the Kavanaugh confirmation, the judge is vowing he won't withdraw from consideration after a new allegation of sexual misconduct when he was a Yale student. He called the claim a smear and said he wants to publicly testify before the Senate. The woman who accused him of assault in high school is also set to appear. President Trump backed Judge Kavanaugh this morning when asked about it at the United Nations.
I think it could be, there's a chance that this could be one of the single most unfair, unjust things to happen to a candidate for anything. But I am with Judge Kavanaugh, and I look forward to a vote.
The Senate showdown involving Judge Kavanaugh and his accuser is set for Tuesday. The Vatican has reached an agreement with China over the appointment of Catholic bishops in the communist country.
And today, for the first time, all the bishops in China are in communion with the Bishop of Rome, with the successor of Peter. And Pope Francis, like his immediate predecessors, looks with particular care to the Chinese people.
Cardinal Pietro Parolin there didn't reveal many details about the deal. There's a lot more news headed your way. He was the nation's first ever African-American priest. Now his story is on stage in a powerful way. The Pope visits a KGB prison during his mission to the Baltics. It was a place where priests and bishops were tortured. Crux correspondent Claire Jean Gravet is traveling with Francis. She'll join us from Lithuania in a few moments. And do you have a story idea, something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy, newstips@desalesmedia.org. We'll be right back. The priest made history and is being considered for sainthood. The Catholic Theater Ministry is shining a light on his accomplishments. Currents News' Katie Engesser has that report.
Father, I could be a priest?
That's Jim Coleman, but he's playing someone you may not know about, raising curtains around the country.
I feel like it's a story that hasn't been told. They need the bread of life, and who else will give it to them?
He's playing Father Augustus Tolton, a former slave turned priest, and in all his 30 years of acting, Coleman calls this role his most fulfilling. The Catholic Theater Ministry's St. Luke's production puts on one-man plays showing the life stories of popular saints. But for the first time, they are telling the story of a man not yet canonized.
It is important because that's part of our Black Catholic history.
Still away.
Augustus Tolton was born a slave in 1854. As a child, his mother brought him from chains in Missouri to freedom in Illinois. It was there that Augustus would meet the man who would change his life, a Roman Catholic priest.
To be so forward-thinking and to be so colorblind, to say, come, you're welcome.
His name was Father Peter McGurr, and he brought Augustus into an all-white Catholic school so he can receive a good education. He also helped him discover what history refers to as his calling, the first African-American priest in the United States.
He fought, he begged, he pleaded, but no seminary in America would take him.
Eventually, Augustus was accepted into a seminary in Rome. After ordination, he was sent back to the United States to serve. but he was not welcomed by his flock.
There is too many white folk going there.
Get that new roof for the church out of my money now.
In spite of how he was treated, he never transferred that negative behavior on his congregation.
It is that life of virtue that has led to Father Tolton's canonization cause. If accepted, Father Tolton would be the first African-American saint.
I want him to be sent. He's already sent by God. So we are the one who need to appreciate all the things that we did for us.
Because even over a century after his death, Father Tolton's message still lives on.
That Jesus loves us, and he expects us to love one another just as he loves us.
He showed that despite, his hardships, he was still, able to come back and, put, the injustice aside and help people.
In Queens Village, Katie Anguser, Currents News.
The Archbishop of Chicago, Blaise Supich, removed a priest after he burned a rainbow banner, angering the LGBT community there. Cardinal Supich announced Father Paul Kalchik's removal in a letter to parishioners at the Resurrection Catholic Church. The cardinal said he acted out of concern for the priest's welfare. Pope Francis is in the Baltic states right now for a 4-day visit. One of his stops was in Lithuania, where he visited a Nazi prison. Melissa Butts reports.
Pope Francis stopped his car at the gates of the Vilnius ghetto to pray for the thousands of Jews murdered in this city by the Nazis just 75 years ago. The president accompanied him to a place where he remembered that of the 57,000 people imprisoned by the Nazis in this neighborhood, only 2,000 survived. From there, the Pope went to another terrible place in the city, the former Gestapo and KGB headquarters. It's been converted into the Museum of Occupations and Freedom Fights. The Pope visited the cells where Catholic and Protestant Christians were imprisoned, interrogated, and tortured. Pope Francis was accompanied by the Bishop of Vilnius and another bishop who was the victim of repression in this place. The Pope lit this candle in the museum, which he left burning as a tribute to the victims. Then he prayed, clearly moved in this place of pain and suffering. Next, in the execution area, he wrote a message in the museum's Book of Honor. He said that in this place of violence and hatred, I prayed for reconciliation and peace. Then, visibly tired, he met with victims of repression near the monument that recalls those who died from totalitarianism. There, even more than giving a speech, he prayed this prayer.
Che nel tuo grido e nella vita dei nostri padri che tanto hanno sofferto possiamo trovare il coraggio di impegnarci con determinazione nel presente e nel futuro.
Lithuania proclaimed its independence from Russia in 1918. However, in 1940, during World War II, it was occupied by the Soviet Union, which suppressed its political parties. Between 1941 and 1945, the Nazis occupied it, and then again, the Soviet Union. It did not gain freedom until 1990. Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Faith and culture correspondent for Crux, Claire Jean Gravé, is traveling with the Holy Father throughout his Baltic journey. She joins us now from Vilnius in Lithuania. Claire, thank you so much for being with us. Well, the Pope's 4-day visit to the Baltic states nearing an end. So what remains on the Holy Father's agenda?
Next stop is Estonia, the northernest point of our travels. And the same day we're going to be returning to Rome, where there will be the presser on the plane.
Now, Claire, Francis is in a region that's undergoing significant changes. In Latvia, more and more people, especially the youth, are leaving to explore better opportunities in other countries. What did the Pope have to say about this dynamic?
Well, Pope Francis tried to encourage the youth that has left in droves to search for better opportunities and jobs, especially in the European Union, but also Australia and the United States, and trying to galvanize them into finding hope and future in their own countries. After all, the Pope was invited there, and part of the deal was that he could perhaps inspire youth into thinking that Latvia is a place, Lithuania is a place, Estonia is a place where there is future and opportunity for young people, and also for the church to administer to them, speak to them, and go to where they are.
Claire, this trip is being described as a pastoral mission by the Pope, as most are. But what has the Holy Father been saying to the people there in the Baltics?
Well, some of it is Pope Francis's usual message of openness, acceptance, and mercy. Part of it is also specially packaged and tailored for these countries, which, as we know, have undergone periods of from 1941 to 1991. First Soviet, then Nazi, then again Soviet occupation. And we saw, and the Pope saw with his own eyes, what it was like to be trapped, tortured, and killed by KGB officials. And so he's here to give this country, which has been absolutely brutalized by a century of war, that they can look ahead and that the church can have a role here, even in places where it's a minority, and that it can bring hope and optimism and happiness in a place where in the past really there hasn't been. And obviously diversity and ecumenism is a big part of the message, because there's so many different religions and faiths and ethnicities that coexist in these in-between places like the Baltics.
Claire, really quickly, has Francis discussed the clerical sex abuse crisis there?
Well, the clerical sex abuse crisis hasn't hit the Baltic states so far, but one thing is for sure. All of us journalists are waiting for that moment when we get the Pope to ourselves on the plane going back, and there's only one question on our minds, and that is, what is going to happen with the sex abuse crisis?
All right, Claire Jean Gravé, you never disappoint. Thank you so much for joining me, my friend.
Thank you, Liz.
While in Lithuania, Pope Francis made a joke that has caused quite the stir on social media. While talking to journalists, the Holy Father joked that in the eyes of some, John Paul II is considered a saint while he himself is considered, quote, a devil. The joke came when he was presented a book about John Paul written by a longtime papal photographer. Still to come on Currents News, a beloved saint is remembered in Queens a half-century after Padre Pio returned to the Lord. Bishop DiMarzio kicks off the Great Irish Fair in Coney Island, and a great man is honored. We'll be right back. It has been 50 years since Padre Pio was called to heaven. Parishioners at St. Pancras in Queens remembered the saint with a mass held over the weekend. Padre Pio is known for bearing the marks corresponding to Jesus' crucifixion for 50 years. His pastoral work began as a Capuchin Franciscan and gave him the nickname of the Second St. Francis. The 37th annual Great Irish Fair, which celebrates traditional and contemporary Irish music, kicked off over the weekend. Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio opened the festivities this year by celebrating Mass on the main stage, followed by an award ceremony where our very own Ed Wilkinson received the Al O'Hagan Community Leadership Award.
It's always a great day of fun, Irish culture. And it's a celebration not only of the culture but the faith, and it's a celebration of family, and those are the things that Al O'Hagan stood for. And so I was really thrilled to be able to accept an award today named in honor of Al O'Hagan.
Oh, Ed looking good there in his green shirt. Proceeds from the fair are going to support Catholic education in Brooklyn and in Queens. That is Currents News. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Liz Faublas. Set your DVR to record this program so that you never miss it, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.